Let's answer some questions. PFT PM policy. Would governmental oversight actually make a difference when we all know the NFL's lobbyists in the deep pockets of oligarchs can and will, if not already, buy whatever politician they need to? Now, that may be an oversimplification, but that is part of the dynamic. If and when the NFL is subject to governmental regulation, how will the NFL try to tip the scales in its favor? And it'll be part of our broader political process now, where some are helpful and some aren't. And the NFL would start spending money to try to stack the deck with those that would be helpful, that those that won't give us a hard time. And we see that. And look, it's as simple as presidential politics. And this isn't a political opinion. This is an observation of fact. When Republican control exists in the White House, there's an attitude of less regulation, less enforcement. Let these companies do what they want. When a Democrat is in charge, there's more enforcement, more regulation, more control of individuals who possibly, and companies possibly, can't be trusted to do the right thing without somebody making sure. And there's a happy medium in there somewhere. But I think you're right. If there is governmental oversight, there's a separate universe of political reality that the NFL is going to have to be involved in. But so what? It's better than no oversight at all. I guess that's my point. Some oversight, ineffective oversight that would be subject to the pressures and realities of money being donated to this politician and that politician, but not that one or that one, and the outcome of elections, and elections have consequences, yada, yada. It's still better than leaving the NFL to its own devices. That's my thought. And I know the NFL probably is happy with that thought, but that's okay, because you know what? Very few fans care about it, but you should, because these big picture issues are the things that can eventually blow up for the league. Maddie B. Well. Why can I not watch every NFL game that has ever been on TV? WWE Network on Peacock has all sorts of old matches on demand. Why is the NFL holding back its archive? There's a deal with YouTube where there's a lot of old games. You just have to go to YouTube and be creative. But there's plenty of old games that are legitimately on YouTube. There are some that are probably on there that aren't authorized by the NFL, but you can find old games. I don't know that you can find every one. I don't know who would want to. Like, who wants to watch a Week 3 1977 game between the Broncos and the Chargers? But there are plenty of postseason games, Super Bowls. There's plenty of old content out there, more than you would ever have the time to watch. But yeah, not everything, but who wants to watch everything? And also, I will say this, the NFL Plus service, that now is the thing that houses what they used to call NFL Rewind, where you can go back a certain number of years on that service. It's like $4.99 a month, I think, and watch old games. You don't go back to the 80s and 90s, but I think it goes back 10 to 15 years where you could watch every game. And I think game film is available. Coaches film is available for at least whenever they started doing that. And I think they started doing that 8-9 years ago. Remember when they started making coaches film available and people thought it was going to revolutionize the coverage of the NFL? It doesn't. It doesn't. Just because you can see a different angle, it takes way too much time to break it all down and understand what it all means. That's what the coaches do all the time. And they've got a whole army of coaches who do it. For the media, there really isn't the time. Where's the revenue? Where's the upside? I know some do it, but it's something that, in a world where the goal is to make money, there aren't a whole lot of fans out there begging for a detailed analysis of the tendencies of a team based upon careful and copious film study that you put hours and hours and hours into for a 4 or 5 minute video. Because that's the other part of it too. We all have a very short attention span. How much can you take, distill, digest, and communicate to folks who have the time and the inclination to take it all in? Alex Dunlap, NFL. Can Alvin Kamara's court date be pushed back again? And what is your current prediction about whether he serves a suspension in 2023? I don't have in front of me when he's due to go to court or when there's due to be a trial. I think he's fine for 2023. They haven't put him on the commissioner exempt list, because what will have to happen is criminal process has to end. whenever and however it concludes. That's when the NFL will step in with the personal conduct policy mechanism, investigation, meeting with Kamara, the Judge Sue L. Robinson phase that we learned about last year with Deshaun Watson, where she has a hearing and she makes a decision, and then the NFL has appeal rights beyond that. And the player does, obviously, but the league controls the appeal. We thought this was some revolutionary system. There's an outsider who makes the initial decision, but the league still controls the appeal. So I just think that as a practical matter, this doesn't get done by the end of the 2023 season. And for whatever reason, the NFL decided not to put Alvin Kamara on the commissioner exempt list, even though he is facing felony battery charges. And the bottom line is this. It's all driven by PR. The league's decisions about who goes on commissioner's exempt list and who doesn't is driven by PR. So how shocking, how troubling, how disturbing are the allegations? Not what are the allegations, but how troubling to the average person is the news that the person is accused of doing this. And that's case by case. And they make the decision case by case. And I don't like that, because if you're accused of doing something sufficiently wrong to get you put on the commissioner exempt list, it shouldn't matter who the victim is, or how old the victim is, or what gender the victim is, or where it happened, or how it happened. If you're accused of it, it's a felony, it's battery, it should be apples to apples. And that gets back to the employment lawyer in me that always argued for consistency in the treatment of employees. But for the NFL, this whole thing is a PR tool. What's going to give us a bigger problem? What's going to cause more negativity for us if this player is out on the field and they have to mention from time to time that he's facing these charges? So I personally think that based on where things stand now, good chance Kamara is not suspended in any way in 2023. And by 2024, who knows? He plays a position with a pretty short shelf life. And we've had conversations this offseason about Joe Mixon, Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry. Maybe by next year, Kamara isn't a Saint any longer. And that it doesn't make the legal issue go away. It could impact where he goes next, but it may not be the Saints' problem at all after 2023. We'll see. Ethan McNew, with a majority of fans phoning in the Bengals to win the AFC North, can you see the Steelers winning the North with a history of the division never having a repeat champion last for more than 2 seasons? Look, the Steelers, this is my favorite stat that I've seen so far this year. It came from Mike Reese of ESPN.com. And his main point was, because he covers the Patriots, that New England has not finished last in its division for 22 straight seasons, dating back to 2000. 2000? 2000. The Steelers have the record currently with 34 years without landing in last place in their division, the AFC North, and previous to that, the AFC Central. 1988 is the last year the Steelers finished in last place. And when I wrote about that several weeks back, my point was it's going to take some effort to stay out of the basement. Right now, quarterbacks, they've got number 4 out of 4, assuming that Deshaun Watson ends up being something reasonably close to the Deshaun Watson he was in 2020, the last time we saw him play a full season. But you've got the Ravens and the Bengals right now as the best 2 teams in the division. Bengals better. Ravens still potentially very good. And let's assume that Todd Monken's new offense will work because you've got a great quarterback, you've got great receivers, you've got great running backs. Tends to make an offense work a little better if you've got great players. As one coach recently told me, and I mentioned this in an item on PFT, there is a chess match element to football. But when one team has pawns and the other team has queens and rooks, it's easier to win the chess match. So the Ravens, I think, will still be good. The Browns are a wild card, and the Steelers are going to have a hard time. Now, could they slip through the cracks? Look, I never underestimate the Steelers because they tend to have great seasons when the external expectations are at their lowest. Mike Tomlin knows how to take that and use that to get his guys to play better than we would think they'd be able to play based upon what they look to be on paper. So Tomlin, highly respected, highly capable, and he's got the potential, yes, to take this team all the way to the top of the division. But this team also has the potential to land dead last for the first time since 1988. But remember last year, we wrote them off. Were they 2-6 at the bye? And they still finished up above 500. And if they would have gotten into the postseason tournament, things could have gotten very interesting because they could have knocked one or two of those elite teams off. Not necessarily gotten to the Super Bowl, but they could have knocked an elite team or two off if they had gotten in based on how they were playing when the season came to an end. Don Flamenco, character from the old, one of the Punch-Out, maybe the home Punch-Out game on the Nintendo Entertainment System, ranked the NFC South teams. We did a power ranking a few weeks ago after the postseason or off-season program, excuse me. I can't remember how they fell. So I may be completely contradicting what I did by way of where they landed. Boy, I don't know. You know, I'm of the mindset that the Buccaneers are going to be better than people think. Carlton Davis, Buccaneers cornerback, recently made comments along those lines to Tyler Dunn of golongtd.com. People who doubt us are going to regret it. I think it's better to keep those thoughts to yourself. You don't want to be on anyone's radar screen more than you are. Just accept the fact that you're being overlooked and use that as motivation. And then when the games start, you catch some people napping. You catch some people off guard. I mean, the reality is there's a lot of players still on that team from the Super Bowl championship team of 2020. And you could argue that last year, the Tom Brady angle created all sorts of distractions for everyone that made it harder for the team to be as good as it can be. And it's a breath of fresh air now to move on from Tom Brady. What's Baker Mayfield going to do? I don't know. First, he's got to win the starting job. And if he doesn't, man, that's a problem for him. But if he wins it, where do they go? What does Rashid White do at tailback? They got high hopes for him. They still have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. The defense still has some key pieces where they can be very effective. So I don't think I put Buccaneers as the top team, though, when I did that power ranking. So here's what I'll do. I'll defer to the power ranking that I did. In fear that I will completely turn the four teams upside down based on how they fall in the ranking I did just a few weeks back, I'll defer to that, whatever it may be. Michael Cameron Vey. Do you think the league would be more inclined to put a chip in the ball and track more things digitally, taking word out of the hands of referees as opposed to paying them full time? I don't know what the league's ultimate motivation is, but it is in many respects flowing from a desire to be extremely careful with money. And there's also that hesitation to embrace change. What are the unintended consequences? So much of what happened in 2019 when we had 1 year of pass interference calls and non-calls subject to replay review, because it was such a disaster, I think that's allowed the NFL to just say, we don't want to change anything. We don't, even if it's broken, we're not going to fix it because we might break it even more. There are plenty of things that need to be done. I've heard this for years. The idea that we use 10 yards of chain link to determine whether or not a first down has been secured, when we have all the technological capacities to determine where the ball is in relation to the rest of the field. There's been a laser-based system for first down that's been advocated in the past. It just gets no traction. It costs money. And what does it really add to what we're doing? How does it enhance our bottom line? That's really the key. It's not about making it better. It's about making it more profitable. And look, football is business. Football is family is what they say because it's good for business to say football is family. But football is business. So think of it as a business person. Think of it as someone who is trying to constantly grow profit. You want me to do something that costs more. Okay, you want me to increase expenses. How will that lead to an associated increase in revenue? How will that happen? Well, it won't. It just makes the product better. How will I make more money from this? Well, you won't. But long-term, maybe you will. And see, it's like buying insurance. Spending the money to make things better from an officiating standpoint ensures against that disaster that could happen at some point down the road. Now, my concern is as we get closer and closer to the end of the Roger Goodell tenure, I think he's content to let the next one worry about wherever the landmines are that could go off at some point. He'll just ride it out, and the next commissioner can deal with these hidden pitfalls that the league refuses to spend the money to try to fix before they become a potential problem. Eric Holland, what's your opinion of players like Austin Eckler giving fantasy advice during the season? Is there an issue with that in the gambling policy? Giving advice generally, talking about, as long as you're not sharing inside information, that's the only thing in the policy that would apply. If for example, Austin Eckler's fantasy advice would be, well, we're playing the Chiefs this week, but the defense is really going to focus on taking away the pass and force them to run. So I'd be inclined, not that it matters with the Chiefs, but that's just an example. There's inside information that Austin Eckler has access to that could influence what he has to say. So if it deals in any way with the game he's playing in, that's where I would become a little bit nervous, especially if it would stray toward this idea of, hey, which players might be worth wagering the over-under yardage prop or catches or touchdowns or whatever, because he knows, or in theory has access to, how his team plans to defend that offense or how his own offense plans to operate. Jerry Arco 3, what is more likely to happen? Florio picks the Steelers to go 17-0 in the weekly picks segment, or Sims or Florio pick the Cardinals to go 0-17. Closet Steelers fan and known Cardinals hater. You're wrong about both. I don't care if you think it, because that's the byproduct of having opinions. Because the easiest, most dumbed down approach to reacting to someone who has criticism of your favorite team is to say, you hate my team. Not, maybe this guy's making a point. Not, maybe this guy, if my team would listen to him, maybe my team would be better. It's circle the wagons and give the finger to anyone who dares to point out things that can make your team better. So all you Cardinals fans out there that think I hate the Cardinals, go ahead and think it and be content with 0-17. And I'm not predicting the Cardinals to go 0-17, but they are the underdogs in all 17 games. I suspect they'll somehow stumble into a victory or two, but do you really think you got a playoff contender? Do you really think that this is a team that's going to make it to the postseason? Do you really believe that? If so, I admire that suspension of disbelief. And I may have some property that I don't own that I would like to sell you without buying it first. But we got to be realistic, folks. It's fine to be a fanatic because that is the root for fan. But at the same time, let's be a little realistic about our expectations. The handwriting's already on the wall as to what the Cardinals think about 2023. They don't care about 2023. They care about 2024. This is a scholarship year. Kyler Murray, who knows when he's going to be healthy. It's not like they went out and invested in a capable, high-end backup, all due respect to Colt McCoy. They know what they are. They know who they are. As Stephen Ross said in 2019, and I heard him say it, sometimes you just got to take your lumps. And that was the year he was willing, allegedly, to take his lumps to the point that he offered Brian Flores $100,000 per loss. And he was joking. Still looking for the punchline in that joke. Matt and St. Pete wanted me to look at a little more deeply how the gambling policy does or doesn't apply to agents. Bottom line is it doesn't apply to agents. The NFL has no jurisdiction over agents. We already talked about that, but that's your answer. It doesn't apply. The union would be the only one with the regulatory power over the agents. Then the question is, would a prosecutor look at whether or not an agent is betting on games or trafficking inside information? How would that even land on the prosecutor's radar screen? Bigger picture question, should there be an agency, federal agency, that has comprehensive oversight over all of these matters as it relates to wagering on sports? Willie Huff, what should the Giants and Raiders do if they can't get their running backs to sign the tag and then want to sit out? I can't imagine either Josh Jacobs sitting out for the Raiders or Saquon Barkley sitting out for the Giants. I can't. Now, here's the date to keep in mind, July 17th. That is when the window closes on signing those players to long-term deals. After July 17 at 4 p.m. Eastern, Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley can only sign one-year contracts now. They can ask for more than what they're due to make under the franchise tag. They can ask for other terms, like a commitment that they won't be tagged again next year. But I don't see the upside in sitting out. Look at what happened to Le'Veon Bell. There's something to be said for taking your money and playing. And Barkley's got the better argument to say, I want more than 10.1 million. My franchise tender is dragged down by the fact that lesser running backs than me have gotten the salaries that have driven this lower number, which has actually gone down. And I've put in 5 years. I want more. Now, if he's going to get more, it's most likely going to be in the form of a multi-year deal. But sitting out, I wouldn't recommend it. And when Dalvin Cook was released, one of my thoughts was the Raiders or the Giants could just remove the franchise tender from Josh Jacobs or Saquon Barkley and sign Dalvin Cook. And removal of the franchise tender doesn't happen very often, but it's happened. Jeremiah Trotter, 2002, Andy Reid, the Eagles coach, did it to him in June, I believe. Corey Simon, Eagles defensive tackle, in late August-ish of 2005, had the franchise tender removed, went to the Colts, and basically that was that. And then 2016, after the Panthers went to the Super Bowl, Josh Norman had the franchise tag removed by Dave Gettleman, and he landed with Washington as well with a pretty good contract, just like Trotter got from Washington, but it doesn't happen very often. And as you get closer to the start of the season, budgets are set, money is spent, rosters are in place. If you strip the franchise tag from Josh Jacobs on August 26th, are you getting 10.1 this year? Probably not. Saquon Barkley, there's going to be a point right before the start of the season where it would be hard to imagine him getting from someone else what he could get under the franchise tag. So these are just part of the dynamics. It's part of the leverage that a player has. I hate the franchise tag. The franchise tag is a way to artificially limit a player from becoming a free agent. It's been part of this post-strike from 1987 CBA. The strike happened. It failed. The union sued for antitrust violations. After the union shut down during the strike, the union was winning the case. And the settlement of the case was this comprehensive CBA with real free agency, limited by the annual ability of a team to keep one of its free agents off the market with the franchise tag or the transition tag. And that's reality. It's a tool that teams use to keep players from getting the long-term deal, the life-changing money, the generational wealth that they have earned. And I hate it. And it's never going away. And I hate it. JC Carm, is there a situation where Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and Anthony Richardson aren't week one starters? I was talking to somebody about this earlier in the week on radio somewhere. I can't remember which station, but I feel like it's a given they're all going to be week one starters. It would be a shock if one or more of them is not starting week one. Another one from JC Carm: when the Lions move on from Jared Goff, is he an instant starter like Kirk would be, or would he be relegated to backupville? Depends on where he goes, because look, the Lions are thrilled to have Jared Goff because he's given them what they didn't have before, which is basic relevance. They're relevant. Even though they haven't made the playoffs yet, they're relevant. Look at this year. All these national televised standalone games. High expectations to make it to the playoffs. But then the question is, can Goff take them to the next step? He's taken them to the step of being on the fringe of playoff contention, which is a lot more than what the Lions have had for a long time. So what do we do next? What's the next step? Can he take us that next step? If they decide he can't and they just throw him back into the vat of available quarterbacks, will there be a team out there that says, well, you know, he's never going to win a Super Bowl, but we can't even get to the playoffs with the guys we have. Playoffs? We can't even get to the playoffs with the guys we have. So it's all a matter of perspective. And I think that's what happens with Goff. He plays well enough to get the team to a point where the aspirations become big enough that they realize he's not going to take them the rest of the way. JC Carm: I love PFT PM because it reminds me of that first hour of PFT Live that you used to do alone. I love that. That was the radio only PFT Live. And I enjoyed that because there's an extra dynamic where you've got a camera on you all the time. It's easier to just talk into a microphone. If I have an itch, I can scratch it. I got an itch right here on my nose. And I try not to do that. But when you're just on radio, you can do whatever you want. I used to enjoy that. And this is a nice little replacement for it 5 weeks out of the year when PFT Live is on hiatus. JC Carm is Arthur Smith on the hot seat. Falcons coach entering year 3, I believe. I don't think he is. Next year or the year after, maybe. But this year, I think he's good to go. And I think his team will be good enough that he wouldn't be fired anyway. David Mitchell, you put Mahomes in Deion Sanders' upper room already based solely on today's numbers or predictions. You rank him up there with multi-Super Bowl winning quarterbacks. He's not Tom Brady, Joe Montana, Terry Bradshaw, Peyton Manning, Troy Aikman, Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, John Elway. Toss out Plunkett, Bob, Roger, and Starr all before my time. My point is this, and this goes back to something I said yesterday. I think Mahomes has already done enough where he's in the Deion Sanders upper room best ever Hall of Fame. And it's a dumb hypothetical because he's going to keep going. And do we have any reason to think that all of a sudden he's just not going to be the guy that he's been? We've seen 5 years of one of the most impactful, creative, and talented athletes of all time. And what we've seen in those 5 years is 3 Super Bowl appearances, 2 Super Bowl wins, 2 Super Bowl MVP awards. Last year, he broke a streak that went back to 1999 of the regular season MVP not also becoming the Super Bowl MVP or even winning the Super Bowl. He's amazing. And there's no reason to think it won't continue. And even if it wouldn't continue, even if all of a sudden it's just gone, he's still done enough that a lot of those names you rattled off, his career's better than them. And he gave us during that 5 years something we've never seen. I think that's part of what makes him special. We've seen quarterbacks throw the ball and win games and win championships. We never saw a guy do what Mahomes has been doing. He's going to influence a generation of future kids that come to the NFL. Hopefully we'll be talented enough to do it and play like he plays. I mean, we've been waiting for the next true Michael Jordan for a long time. I know LeBron James, I don't get into all that because I don't cover basketball. I don't pay attention to basketball. I didn't even watch much of it this year, if any. Maybe some in the finals, but not much. But we keep waiting for somebody to be the embodiment of the way that one revolutionary player changed the way that the game is played. And Michael Jordan just moved a different way. He did things differently, and others saw what you could do with the human body and tried to mimic it, and some could and most couldn't. When you see the way Mahomes plays quarterback, there are kids out there, and Sims talks about this. His son would drive him crazy because he wants to throw sidearm and he wants to do all the fancy stuff that Patrick Mahomes does. Somebody out there is going to have the skills to do it. Somebody out there is going to play baseball, play shortstop like Mahomes did, and learn that you don't have the luxury of having great form for every throw. You just got to get rid of the ball from any angle, body position. You just got to learn how to get that ball from point A to point B as accurately as possible. It's going to be somebody else, I hope, in my lifetime. I hope there's somebody else who can do what Patrick Mahomes does. But what we've already seen in 5 years is so unlike anything we've ever seen. I think he waltzes right into that Deion Sanders non-existent upper room to the Hall of Fame that should absolutely be there. All right. Let's wrap this up. Let's see if we have any questions from Threads. We have a far greater user base on Twitter, nearly 2 million followers. We're up to 10.6 million on Threads. Let's see if we have any questions to answer. Jaguars snuck under the radar. This is from Patriots fan 122480. Jaguars snuck under the radar for most part last year. How far do you think they'll get this year, especially coming from the weaker AFC South? I think they're a force to be reckoned with this year. I think it took them a while to really find their stride last year, and Trevor Lawrence said it was the loss to Russell Wilson and the Broncos in London that finally woke him up. But Doug Peterson, proven track record, Super Bowl winner. Lawrence, first overall pick a couple of years ago. That first year, we still remember what a disaster it was because of Urban Meyer. We saw what Trevor Lawrence can be last year. They've got some great weapons on offense. They've got Calvin Ridley that I think is going to be an eye-opener for a lot of people. They've got some great defensive players. I think they're the best team in the division, and they're one of the teams that I look at in the AFC that is in the mix. You're going to get down to those last few games of the postseason, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be difficult. You're going to be threading needles to try to win these games. There's going to be great teams that get left out. There's going to be great teams that don't make the playoffs. They could be good enough to get to the Super Bowl, especially if they finish with a strong kick, but they don't get in. There's a lot of great teams in the AFC, but I think the Jaguars are among the best, and I think they're going to be pretty good this year. Flavor Flav. Thoughts on teams I can't make a prediction on for the upcoming season? Packers, Lions, Cowboys, Seahawks. I'll keep this simple. Packers are going to be better than people think. Lions are going to be worse than people think. Cowboys are going to be Cowboys, and Seahawks are going to be pretty damn good. That's my quick assessment of all four. Flavor Flav, again, what big-name current quarterback do you think has the chance to want out or ask for a trade in the next few years, given the direction it looks like their team is going? Great question, and I don't say that just to buy time, but I am buying time. Most great quarterbacks don't want out in their prime. They're willing and content to kind of go along with the system and see where things go. I could see Kyler Murray wanting out of Arizona after this year, but I could also see Arizona wanting Kyler Murray out. I think for a lot of these quarterbacks, especially when they have long-term second contracts or third contracts, I understand they've forfeited their ability to stomp their feet and say, I want to go somewhere else. And a lot of the younger quarterbacks don't seem to be wired to take a stand like that. Now, look, Joe Burrow is a guy that I assume the Bengals are going to take care of him. And I assume the Bengals are going to take care of the guys around him. And I assume the Bengals are going to provide him with competent blockers. And I assume he's going to want to be there for the balance of his career. But he's a guy who I don't think would hesitate to say, hey, folks, this isn't working. I just need to go somewhere else. But because he's that way, and because I think the Bengals know it, that makes it more likely they're going to put everything around him where he never actually decides to do it. I wonder if Justin Herbert would ever want out of the Chargers. I can't imagine that. But, a lot of it depends upon whether or not they give him the contract that he's trying to get. He hasn't gotten his yet, and maybe they'll try to kick the can into next year, and maybe that'll upset him. What else? T. Greg 4114. Why are you so bitter? I just am. Here's another one on Herbert. Do you think he gets an extension before training camp? I don't put anything by the Chargers. The Chargers at times are dysfunctional, and dysfunctional teams do dysfunctional things. One last question. Oh, how about two more? At Do Not Lizard, who will be the first head coach to win a Super Bowl with two different teams? Well, Sean Payton is keenly aware of it and wants to do it. Doug Peterson has a chance to do it. Doug Peterson's got a better chance to do it this year than Sean Payton. Mike McCarthy's got a better chance to do it this year than Sean Payton. But Payton is very aware, and I think he's going to need a few years to get that team to where it needs to be. Last one. Threads or Twitter, where will be more of your current content going forward? We're going to stay with Twitter. Twitter, we fish where the fish are. Nearly 2 million followers on Twitter. We post immediately on Twitter. I post most of the things that get posted on Twitter over onto Threads. It's basically the same. The thing about Threads, and this is a legitimate complaint and criticism, there's no way to just see the stuff from the accounts you follow. It's this curated algorithm of things they think you'll like. And, I like it, so I'll follow this account, but it still doesn't show up. I don't get it. I don't understand the logic of the algorithm that serves me what I'm seeing, and maybe they'll eventually add a way to only look at the accounts you follow. I'd like to think they're smart enough to do that. And, I was dismayed when Twitter all of a sudden rolls out this For You thing, which is all this stuff that I don't care about. And you have to make sure that you're paying attention to which side of the vertical you're on. Because I would follow those accounts if I cared about those things. Why are you giving me these things? That's what I don't understand. There's much that I don't understand. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.